Before I get on to my main topic, which is Micheal Martin and how badly he's failing as every day goes by, I'll just make an observation that some of the tribe may find interesting. A while ago, or last week actually, I was driving up a laneway near my parents' home where I live. And, you know, you have to be careful driving into that laneway because there's a blind corner and you could end up hitting somebody if you didn't take it slowly. So I took it slowly. There was around the corner a woman with some children and a dog, and I think she'd a pram or something. So I had approached it very slowly. The woman was fine and gave me a little wave, and I waited. Then I kind of crept. They moved over to the side, and I crept forward. And then, and I swear this is what happened, a man with a dog appeared out of nowhere. He appeared out of nowhere, standing in the middle of the road, walking towards me, although evidently he could see I was driving towards him. He had a dog with him. And I remember when I was younger, when I was kind of in my teens, particularly in school and in my 20s in university, I remember these ones. And they would appear out of nowhere. I remember them on the train at night, and I'd be coming home from university because I did my degree by evening. So we would start lectures maybe at 6 or 7 p.m. Sometimes we'd end at 10. And I'd then be getting late trains and buses home. And they'd appear. They'd appear at the bus stop, or they'd appear at the station platform. I remember a particular station, Booterstown. And I remember a woman saying to me, she hated going to Booterstown station because it was so eerie at night. And it is a very eerie station. That's partly because it's right out at the sea, you know, at South Dublin Bay. And between it and the road, there's a marsh. So you have to go down, to get to Booterstown station, you have to go down a road which is built into the marsh. And there's a car park, the station building and that. And the railway line was originally built through the marsh. You wouldn't be allowed to do that now. But I always remember that was a spooky station, Booterstown. But I remember people would appear. You'd have this sensation of them appearing from nowhere. And I'm aware that that man who appeared then, after I had given way to the woman and the kids and the pram and the dog and all that, that man who suddenly appeared, I just drove straight at him and he jumped out of the way. That was an NPC. I know it now. That was an NPC. The face, the movements. That was an NPC. And that's what I saw all those years ago when I was in school. When I was in university. They were NPCs. They appeared out of nowhere. Now you know what they are. So knowing it was an NPC, I just drove straight at it and it jumped out of the way. How our own mindsets have changed is incredible. If that was not an NPC, it was just a very, very stupid normie who decided to walk out in front of a car despite the fact that he saw that or should have seen that I'd made way for people, and then I wanted to get further up the laneway. No, just walk out into the middle of them. Waterford Whispers had a particular article about how to make sure to stand behind a reversing car. Waterford Whispers is normie, it's also establishment. It's not satire. Because it attacks personally Gemma and John, so that means it's not satire. But Waterford Whispers, they wouldn't have been aware of what they were doing. They were talking about NPCs as well. You're reversing in the car park at the supermarket, you're reversing even out in your own driveway or wherever, and they appear. They just appear out of nowhere. I remember when I was about 20 doing a play with an absolute washout of a guy. But he said to me, every time I'm in the car and I'm trying to manoeuvre, either a cyclist appears or a man with a dog. I know what he was getting at now. I knew what he was getting at then, actually. But they're not the same as us. They're not the same. They're not the same species. They're not the same species. But that happened. I really saw that the other day when I was in the laneway, and then it just appeared. I just drove straight at it because if it's an NPC, you know, it's non-playing, it's non-performative, so it's okay. And it jumped out of the way they do. NPCs always do jump out of the way. Watch that as well. I had another name for them when I was a kid and teenager and in my 20s, bland bastards. That was my term, a bland bastard. I was sensitive to NPCs then. That man, that poor man who was such a difficult individual to work with in that play when I was 20, he saw them for what they were. He wasn't using the term that we're using now. He hadn't analysed it as far as we have. But that's what it was. We are developing those black glasses. We are taking that red pill. And once you've taken it, you can't go back. Once you put on the black glasses, you can't take them off. They Live, that B movie from 1988, shows that in the end, coming towards the last 10 or 15, here's a plot spoiler, coming to the last 10 or 15 minutes of it, the hero characters aren't having to wear the black glasses anymore because the scenery of their minds has changed. So they can see without having to put those on. And once you've got to that stage, and I realised I'd got to that last week, that was a defining moment for me last week. Once you've got to that stage, you don't need to put the black glasses on or to take the red pill. But you can't go back. The red pill wouldn't work. Taking off the black glasses wouldn't work. You can't go back. The main topic, though, of course, is Micheal Martin, because I go up to Howth every day and I get coffee and I buy the paper from my father and maybe I go and buy groceries from my mother and that kind of thing. And, everybody's on lockdown and it's really quiet up there now. It's nice. It's pleasant, actually. But, I was talking to somebody recently, and he was talking about how Micheal Martin even managed to get rebuffed by Biden, because Martin really, 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 really wanted to go to Washington for St. Patrick's Day, and Martin does not have the new or the intelligence or the sense to have said, no, I'll seize the initiative here and say, no, I'm not going this year. I won't accept an invitation from the White House. I will politely decline, and Joe and I can do it on Zoom or whatever, and then broadcast it on RTE. They'd be given 3 hours of a loop on RTE. That was an open goal for Martin, and he didn't take it because he's too thick. That's what else can I say? He didn't take it because he's too thick. Martin had his last chance at the general election in February of 2020. He should have resigned as leader of Fianna Fáil and gone to being a backbencher. Had he done that, he'd probably be roaring ahead now. There were so many, many things Martin could have done. So many things Martin could have done. Owen Harris, who's not bad, actually, is eulogising Martin. Harris always eulogises whoever's the sitting Taoiseach. Some are better than others. But Harris was eulogising Martin. He said, Martin has kept Sinn Fein out of the frame by doing a coalition with Fine Gael. Oh, yeah, Sinn Fein are a bad party. I agree with that. I've no time for Sinn Fein. Sinn Fein are a terrorist party who supported blowing up pubs and shopping centres and all of this kind of thing, and who are very morally equivocal, and I put that mildly, about things like the Warrington bomb where 2 children were murdered. Enniskillen could have, if anything was going to push Northern Ireland into a Rwanda situation, it was Enniskillen. By the grace of God and by the grace of the victims of the Enniskillen bomb and their restraint, it didn't happen. Thank God. It wasn't thanks to Sinn Féin and the IRA. It was despite them. Many of us have not forgotten Enniskillen or the Warrington bomb. Le Mans. Bloody Sunday. Or Bloody Friday, I should mean. Bloody Friday was when the IRA blew up Belfast in the space of about 2 hours. So, these things, Guildford and the Birmingham pub bombs, these things don't go away. As much as, and Sinn Féin give out about RTE and say RTE, are biased against them. No, RTE are biased in favour of Varadkar. RTE, though, don't ask the hard questions of Sinn Féin either. That's why I never ever support Sinn Féin, because I was 19 when they bombed Warrington, and I remember looking in the paper and seeing the grief on the face of the mother of Jonathan Ball. I remember seeing that, the grief on that woman's face about her 3-year-old son who had been murdered by the IRA. I never have and never will forgive them for what they did to that woman. Leaving aside everything else, Enniskillen, Le Mans, Bloody Friday, all of those other things, Claudie. Leaving aside that resonated very deeply with me when I was 19. That woman in Warrington whose son was murdered by the IRA. 3 years old he was. His parents are elderly like mine. In other words, he was probably their last chance to have a child. And I knew what it would have done to my parents. And I knew what it had done to them. And that's why I'll always consider Sinn Féin and the IRA, frankly, to be the scum of the earth. So this notion on the part, though, of Owen Harris that Micheál is keeping Sinn Féin away, I wouldn't worry that much, because there's an awful lot of people in Ireland who have a memory like mine for what Sinn Féin and the IRA did. Sinn Féin got that vote in 2020 for one reason. They got it as a protest vote. They also got it because people are sorry, I was going to say it, I'll say people are stupid. Because I didn't vote for Sinn Féin, but I didn't vote for Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil either. Neither did I vote for the Greens. Micheál Martin had a lot of red flags coming for him. The first was in 2017 when Varadkar took over as leader of Fine Gael. Now, I have very little time for Fine Gael, in a different way from Sinn Féin. But even within there, in Fine Gael, the likes of the Fine Gael Parliamentary Party, like Alan Shatter, who's highly competent despite being a psychopath and despite being utterly psychotic. Psychotic Shatter is. Hated he was. The civil service couldn't stand him because he was just so rude. But Shatter from the start, and Enda Kenny, said, be careful of Varadkar. I don't believe that Shatter or Enda Kenny are necessarily psychopaths. It doesn't add up. Oh, Varadkar is. Varadkar's a low IQ psychopath with a certain degree of presence on the autistic scale. And I'm not being funny when I say that. But I said that from the moment Varadkar became leader of Fine Gael in Taoiseach. I looked at that thing and I said, no, oh, no. I saw the darkness within. No. And again, this is not an exaggeration or me being ironic or funny. Varadkar's hair is the giveaway for me. He can't even just get it one-bladed or two-bladed, the way actually Martin does, believe it or not. So Varadkar became Taoiseach and leader of Fine Gael in 2017. That's when Martin should have pulled the plug on confidence and supply. Had he done so, he may well have got 50 seats. Because Martin had a bit of a bounce at that time, and people didn't like Varadkar from the start. No, Martin let Varadkar continue as Taoiseach. That's why that was the start of a process in 2017. Here we are nearly 4 years later. That was this first domino that fell, and here we are, the further dominoes falling. Martin, from 2017, has been completely beholden to Varadkar. That's because Varadkar is a psychopath, and Varadkar is a vacuum into which he sucks anybody who comes near. Thomas Sheridan analysed it this way, but it's a general and much older analysis of dealing with psychopaths. No contact ever again. That's Thomas's thing, NCAA, no contact ever again. But in fact, all the experts and the scientists and the psychologists have said that for a long, long time. Martin should have gone NCEA on Varadkar by calling a general election and by collapsing supply and confidence. People didn't like Varadkar. Okay, RTE thought he was great and the Irish Times thought he was great, but that's RTE and the Irish Times. And Varadkar is woke, and Varadkar is, it's this Luke O'Neill thing, Tony Holohan thing. Varadkar is a doctor. Well then if he's a doctor, he's beyond reproach, and we must not ask any questions. One of the criticisms I would make of Gay Byrne when he was the decision maker of the Late Late Show is that Gay was deferential to academics. You don't get that in British telly. You don't get that. You don't get that unquestioning deference. Even my father mentioned it. They had mentioned it for a long time. These academics with their PhDs would get an RTE and would spout rubbish most of the time. And nobody questioned them because they're academics with PhDs, and it's not in RTE's culture, because Gay didn't go to university. I don't think Mike Murphy did either. But Mike had that certain aristocratic thing where they just question people. I suppose I have it to an extent. But I did go to university, so I learned to bloody question these ones. But Gay was, you would see an academic coming on to the Late Late. Gay would not ask them any awkward questions. They would not ask them any awkward questions. He changed when these ones would come on. He changed. Now, a lot of academics have also acquired the skill of talking people down. And if you go to university, you learn it. Barristers learn it as well. how to talk around things. Brian Lenihan was a great barrister. He sounded so eloquent. The fact that he said very little didn't matter, but he said it so well. And academics have that, and they could cowgay burn. And that culture is still infesting in RTE, quite aside from everything else now, wokeness and all this. But that's been a perennial and long-term pestilence of RTE, deference to academics. They have letters after their name. So what? I've letters after my name. So what? Who cares? I still have to go and do shopping and come across NPCs when I'm driving out of my house. Getting back to Micheal Martin, the person I talked to a few days ago was saying, Micheal Martin is appalling and won't end the lockdown, and at the same time wouldn't stand up to the people having that little bash in RTE for the clapped out old slapper who was retiring, some overpaid charge hand, going off to an overpaid pension. That's what she is, a clapped out old slapper. She looked like somebody you'd see at any Irish wedding from Castle Bar. Irish weddings are full of these ones. You wonder with some Irish women, do they really make an effort to dress badly, have bad hair, bad makeup and bad shoes? I don't know. I don't know what it is. So apparently she was a reception manager. Your guess is as good as mine. So they need a manager in the reception in RTE. They need somebody to manage them. What does she do? Arrange the flowers or do the rosters? So she's a charge hand. So apparently the receptionists in RTE can't work out their roster among themselves. And it's so demarcated and unionised. They wouldn't move a thing in the desk. The cleaners are there to do that. That's how RTE works. I got into secondary teaching at the tail end of that. I wish it had been a bit more like that in secondary teaching. Secondary teaching's fallen apart now because we don't have active trade unions in secondary teaching. I saw that as well. I saw it around 2012, which is the year that I got out of it. Anyway. When the scandal regarding the Hooli in RTE broke, Martin had a open goal to him. But nobody misses an opportunity the way Martin misses an opportunity. Don't forget, Alan Shatter and Enda Kenny had said, watch Varadkar. They'd said that even before he became leader of the party in Taoiseach. They didn't like him. Kenny was aware that although Varadkar was in his cabinet, that Varadkar was undermining him all the time. And Shatter had seen that as well, because Shatter, I don't like Alan Shatter, but nobody could accuse Shatter of being stupid or not being shrewd. Shatter's very shrewd. Arrogant. It's a Fine Gael. He wouldn't last. Shatter wouldn't have got onto a county council if he'd been in Fianna Fáil. They wouldn't have tolerated him in Fianna Fáil. But Shatter is, to my mind, the epitome of classic Fine Gael. More than Varadkar, who's just an aberration anyway. Kenny to an extent, although Kenny could have cut it in Fianna Fáil, because Kenny's people underestimate Enda Kenny. I wouldn't say I like him very much, but I wouldn't underestimate him. I would underestimate Varadkar, and I just know what Shatter is about. Before Varadkar became Taoiseach, they were saying, watch him, and they weren't saying that fondly. They weren't saying, there's a talented politician who's up and coming. What they said was, there's a predator. Maybe they didn't use those words. It's what they identified in Varadkar. There is a predator. Oh, yes. When Varadkar became Taoiseach and he came out with this remark, I'm being Taoiseach from people who get up early in the morning, I identified that. That for me, that was finished Varadkar with me. Although the look on his face, the hair, the whole way he carried on then, I took a close look. I said, no. In a way, it's better that Varadkar got that job rather than Simon Coveney, because Simon Coveney is a wrong one altogether. But Simon Coveney is clever and he's plausible and he's got gravitas. Varadkar hasn't got an iota of gravitas, nor is Simon Harris. So in a way we dodged a bullet with Coveney, because Coveney is a real hardcore globalist. Oh, Coveney's really part of that whole Klaus Schwab set. And we didn't get Coveney as Taoiseach. Coveney is highly competent and highly plausible and sounds very good and speaks very well. Coveney went to a Jesuit school, so did I can spot them. He has a Jesuit accent. Coveney has a Jesuit accent. You would take Coveney seriously. To an extent, you would take Coveney seriously. He's not got that autistic thing that Varadkar has. You know, I can see how a whole load of Middle Ireland, had Coveney become Taoiseach, he could have taken Fianna Fáil to a majority. Fine Gael, I beg your pardon. He could have taken Fine Gael. Well, you know, what's the difference these days, I suppose, at least superficially. There's a big difference, but that's a heritage thing more than what's happening under Martin and Varadkar. But Coveney could have taken Fine Gael to a majority. Now that we see today, now in 2021, even more than when they had the leadership contest in 2017, had Coveney won the leadership in 2017, it could be a far bleaker scenario today, far bleaker. Always look out what if. What if Coveney had won the leadership of Fine Gael? Because Varadkar only got it on quite a tight margin with a crowd of other losers who he had groomed in that whole Montrose set. Coveney is country. Coveney is country. People outside of Ireland won't know what I mean by country posh, but Coveney is that. You'll meet those in Kellys and Rosslare, those kind of people. Very wealthy, or at least well-to-do. Although, I mean, as my friend and I were saying, all that wealth is being evaporated. If you're in debt now, you're in big trouble. Mortgages, car loans, all that. But I'm wavering here, I'm digressing. I am glad Coveney did not get the leadership of Fine Gael. Because, as I said, if you look at that normie glut group who watch RTE, bought into COVID-19, bought into the masks, went for all of this, they would have lapped Coveney up. Those Fine Gael-y normies, Coveney would have just walked on water for them. Whereas Varadkar walks on water, oh, y'all lose a ledge, y'all. you see, y'all leave a coat. I could bulge my way through his dress, yeah. Oh, y'all lose a ledge, yeah. And he put on glass of couch, and you know, he's a fighting corona. He's going to kick the ass, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to kick the ass off coronavirus, yeah. Oh, y'all lose a ledge, toots ledge bag, yeah. You know, that would never have, those ones who were salivating, and still are actually, over Varadkar. They still are. They'll never stop. Because it's a cult. Those ones would never have dug Coveney. Oh no, square. Oh, boring, yeah. You know, Coveney, who's a culture, he's a culture, yeah. He's bogger, yeah. You know, they wouldn't have bought into Coveney. But an awful lot of other people would have. A lot of people would have. So I'm glad Coveney didn't get to be leader of Fine Gael, because he won't now, because that whole, we're watching as both of them are going down in flames, really, I suppose. What has happened has been, Thomas Sheridan seems to think, and he's been very he's given me a lot of praise, that I analysed that Micheal Martin is the Wicker Man. No, Thomas analysed it, because it was when Thomas said that Micheal Martin is the Wicker Man that I then went and watched the film, and I said, yes, Thomas is right. So Thomas is getting the kudos for that one. But I developed the point. Yes, certainly, I took it from him and I ran with that ball. Yes, absolutely. But it was Thomas who said to me, Martin is like the Wicker Man. Okay. Because when Thomas recommends a film, I tend to go and watch it, because he has interesting taste in cinema. So I went and watched The Wicker Man. I said, oh yeah, yeah. I will do another video eventually when I have the energy and inclination to do it. I'll do a video, I'll do a proper formal critique of The Wicker Man, because it blew my mind and I've dreamt about that film since. The 1973 UK film, The Wicker Man. But let's talk briefly about it. What happened was, essentially, here's the plot spoiler. The plot spoiler is that the main character was a sergeant sent over from the mainland to investigate something that he had been sent. He was not fit to be a police officer, and the only thing that I found upsetting in the film is that when they burnt him in the end, there were live animals. This isn't the story, it didn't happen in the film. It didn't happen in real life, it was in the story. As part of the pagan sacrifice, they sacrificed piglets and calves and geese and lambs. That was very cruel. It wasn't cruel. I'm sorry, it wasn't cruel what they did to him, because he bloody deserved it. But cruelty to innocent animals, no. They weren't even old animals. They were young animals. No. That was utterly unacceptable to me. If that's paganism, no thanks. But of course you can pick. One of the great things about paganism is, hey, you can pick and choose. So this sergeant was sent over to the island. Very quickly he realised that the island had converted to paganism. And he met the Lord in charge of the island, Lord Summerisle, and Summerisle said, oh yes, we recognise Christianity here, we see it as comparative religion. And of course the sergeant was shocked at this. It is not the job of a police officer to take a religious position in the course of duty. Well, I say that again. It is not the job of a police officer to take a religious position in the course of duty. So the sergeant, already by being shocked and appalled at these pagans, had already overstepped the mark. In the end, the sergeant was burnt alive as a pagan sacrifice, and they said to him, they explained it to him, and they explained it to him credibly, and I got it and I accepted it. You came here of your own free will. You're a fool. You're a king insofar as you came over here and arrogated the power of the king, that is the state, upon yourself, although you did not have a warrant. And furthermore, he was disrespectful to them. He was disrespectful to them of their religion, their paganism on the island. Now, there were many features of it, particularly the strong hint of child sexuality, which would have needed, to put it mildly, closer examination. But the fact that they were pagans, that's neither here nor there. It's not the sergeant's problem. He'd got a complaint that there was a child missing. And even so, let's talk now about how the sergeant evaluated the evidence. Being sent something anonymously in the post is not evidence. Keep it on file. Pop over and have a chat with them. If he'd called over to the island and said, hello, actually I'm a police officer now, I don't have a warrant, but I just wanted to see, could I have a chat with you about this? Look, I got this thing. You know, what do you think? Oh no, the little girl hasn't gone missing. Okay, well, if you won't offer me a cup of tea before I go back, I'll go back. You know, and they'd offered him a cup of tea and they were hospitable to him. People on the island had done everything possible to save him from his fate. That's why burning him the way they did was not in any way immoral. Believe it or not. The only wicked, immoral thing I saw in that film was what they did in the Wicker Man to those animals. That's all. That was wicked and immoral. I eat meat and I wear leather. That, for me, wearing leather is as important as eating meat, because you're showing regard for the animal by turning it into shoes and a coat. So it's serious to me, you know. The wearing of leather for a coat is an important thing, unless you're going to be a vegan. But I'm 47, I wouldn't be alive if I'd been a vegan. As thin as I am anyway. You know, God. So the eating of animals and the wearing of animals, it's a good thing. It's not just that it's not an evil thing or immoral. It's the right thing to do. You kill them, eat them, wear them. But kill them humanely. Kill them humanely. And burning those poor animals alive in the Wicker Man was not humane. And that was the one thing. That was actually the only thing about those people in the island that I could say positively was immoral. If there was child sexuality or sexualization of children going on, certainly there were a lot of hints of it in the Wicker Man. A lot of hints. But again, you need proof. So your man, the sergeant, comes over to the island, and as far as he's concerned, there's a missing child murdered somewhere in the island, and the people wound him up like a clock. At the end, Summerisle said that to him when they were leading him up to be burnt in the Wicker Man. He said, we've played with your mind from the moment you set foot here. Actually, that's not true. They played with his mind before he'd set foot there as well. This is what has happened to Micheal Martin, and Micheal Martin is the Wicker Man. Because the suicide rate is rising. Hospitality is collapsing. The pubs, the restaurants, the hotels, the B&Bs, they're not going to survive this. All of those people, they're not going to survive this, and they put their faith in the vintners, and they put their faith in the government and their pals in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that they'd be looked after. Oh yeah, 3 weeks to flatten the curve. Back in March of last year, I said to one person, get out. You own a small business, you own a premises. Get out. Jump ship. When the Titanic was sinking, you jumped. Now, you may have ended up getting wet and cold, you may even have died, but it was better than staying in a sinking ship now, wasn't it? Listening to the music as they drowned, nearer my God to thee. I don't condemn that woman for not taking my advice, but I gave it to her in clearest terms then, and she knows I did. What I said to her was, Get out now. Sell, lay off your staff, make them redundant, sack them. And when the time is right, come back and rehire the staff, rehire the premises at 1/20th of the rent. No, she wouldn't listen. I don't blame her. And I don't blame the other people who thought they could keep their pubs and B&Bs and guest houses and restaurants going. I saw what was coming. I don't want to be boastful. I don't want to gloat. I hope I'm not gloating with saying this, but the truth is that I did tell her, and I told one or two others, this is not temporary. Insofar as the 3 weeks to flatten the curve thing, no, don't buy into that, please. I was talking to another person who had a son who needed a medical procedure. And they wanted to go public with it. I don't think they necessarily would be in a position to go the full VHI route. So they went public and they were told, we can't give you an appointment now because of COVID. Well, when can you give us an appointment? No, we can't. So they went private and they paid for it. And they decided not to tell the public service. They decided to leave him on the waiting list, and he still hasn't been contacted nearly a year later. How many other people are going to be like that? How much essential medical treatment has been put aside for this? And the nurses doing TikTok videos and the guards doing TikTok videos as well, until that was so tone deaf that people just said no. So we're dealing with the job losses, the loss of income, the loss of small to medium-sized businesses, the people who didn't get medical treatment, and how their chronic illnesses are worsening and worsening and worsening. In the United States, there are people driving in huge vehicles from big houses that they have mortgages on to food banks. Yeah, they're living the American dream now, aren't they? This is happening here. Of course, it's always in Ireland in comparison to the United States. It's always on a smaller scale, but it is in fact the same thing. Martin had one job to do. His job was to end the lockdown. That's all. Because whatever about COVID-19 and whatever about all the rest of it, the other long-term consequences and collateral effect of what has happened is infinitely worse than any flu. Now, I have a video up saying, in my opinion, why the lockdowns happened. Martin should have seen that coming and not become leader of Fianna Fáil. At the general election in 2020, he was given a warning. I remember in 2018, I ran to be a chairman of a residents' association. And the person who got the post got something like 45 successful votes, and I got one. And I read the room. I said, these people don't want me. And I wrote to the chairman that night, who the successful person. I said, I believe they have made the right decision. And I decided I would never run for that particular organisation again. I've expanded that now as of 2020. I'll never run for any vote. My instinct was to contact him and say they've made the right decision. And that's what I said to him. And the only change I've made since is that they were righter than ever. Because I'm a Democrat as well as being a Republican, and I believe that there is a certain sanctity to a properly convened democratic vote. That, by the way, that election for the chairman, there was nothing to suggest that the vote was in any way improper or onto it. It wasn't. They made the right decision then. And, I'm reflecting on it, and it was righter than ever. Nobody voted for me. Well, one person voted for me. Nobody voted for me. They were right, though. They made the right decision. And then at the following year, I decided I wasn't going to put my name forward. And now I made the right decision there by not putting my name forward. And I made the right decision by running as I did in 2018, and they made the right decision by not voting for me. But, in relation to local issues and litigation that I might be bringing I'm not a public representative, and I'm not chairman of their residents' association, and I'm not even on the committee. So they aren't now in any position to make any demands of me. And they're a class of person who address politicians by their first name and address me as if I am something that they trod in. Yet at the same time, they want to know what I'm doing at my litigation. And 95% of the time, I just do not reply. And the 5% of the times that I do reply, when their emails are so offensive to me, the tone of the email would be very much middle finger raised on my part. This is an interesting time we're in. Micheal Martin is the Wicker Man. He wanted to go to the White House and Biden gave him the middle finger. This speaks so much of the narcissism and deficit within Micheal Martin's character. He couldn't even read the room and say, you know, first of all, going to the White House would irritate the Irish people beyond measure, and secondly, they mightn't have me. He wanted so much to have the semiotic of being there holding the shamrock with the US president that he could not. He was so blinded by that he could not take one step back and say, maybe not this year. And like that residents' association, once I didn't get the vote, I said, that's it. And Martin, when he didn't get enough numbers to get Taoiseach last year, February last year, he should have said, I'm now resigning. And let somebody else who can get the numbers go for it. I know had I been in his position, I would have done it, but I wouldn't have been in his position. We're being Jungian here now, aren't we? I wouldn't have been in his position. I wouldn't have been in his position. Easy. You know? I'm talking about if 2 and 2 equaled 5. You know, I can't be saying, well, had I been the leader of Fianna Fáil in the general election of 2020, well, you know, wouldn't have happened had a donkey been a pig or something. You know, no, but that 38 seats he got, that's not enough to make a majority. So he should have said, I'm out of here. Let's get somebody else to lead it. Oh, who could do it? No, I don't care. Get somebody else. You know, and see on the backbenches. That would have taken character. That would have taken strength. And we're seeing that Martin doesn't have it now. And he didn't have the character and strength after the slapper's ball in RTE. He didn't have the character and strength to say, right, here's our chance. Defund RTE. Let's do it now. Let's have it done by Christmas. That would have been a Trump thing to do. But no. Micheál said, well, I think, they've dealt with the matter and, we need to leave it at that. Well, this is something that people are talking about Martin as well. I'll wrap up. The moral of the story is Martin was so blinded by the desire to become Taoiseach that he got in with Varadkar. The rest is history. Get in with a psychopath and you end up like this situation. We're now finding out, and this is, I may not be sure about this, that there was a state-sponsored unit spreading black propaganda to cause anxiety and fear. Go to gript.ie and see what they have to say. I make no claims there, but are they disseminating propaganda? Yes, I saw that in 2017 with RTE and Varadkar and the Waterford University Hospital whistleblowers. I saw that there. Or do RTE tell lies for Varadkar? Yes, they do. That's provable. We know that. So the notion that there might be a state-sponsored propaganda unit to foment anxiety and fear in relation to COVID-19 and other things, of course, I would be surprised if there wasn't. But it now seems that we've got them and that we've called them out on this. So that's going to be interesting. Micheál Martin is a do-gooder and a sucker. Never give a sucker an even break. He took on the role of Taoiseach, king for a day. That's what they talk about in The Wicker Man. You chose to be king for a day. Well, Martin has chosen to be king for a day because it's this nonsense of the rotating Taoiseach thing. So halfway through the term, he'll resign as Taoiseach. Varadkar takes over. That shows also, particularly from Fianna Fáil, shocking disregard for the nature of the role of Taoiseach. The fact that he would consider it a rotating role, that's not what it was designed to be. De Valera is spinning in his grave over that. But that's it. He's the Wicker Man and he was king for a day.